All right, gents, moving on to rugby. Garen, the biggest upset, I suppose, this weekend was the Rebels beating the Waratahs, or maybe not so, because the Rebels do seem to have been having a good string of results. And you might need to eat your hat after the Kings claimed their first win of the season.
Yeah, interesting set of results in week 6. Again, another really strong weekend for the New Zealand teams. Certainly not so much for the Australian teams, and South Africa a little bit iffy as well. Starting with New Zealand again, 4 victories from 4 matches for the second weekend in a row. Can't do any better than that. They seem to be winning at home in Australia. You think the Chiefs knocking over the Brumbies in Canberra, which is a fantastic result, must be the biggest defeat the Brumbies have ever suffered in Canberra. And then the Crusaders now in South Africa for the second week. This time beating the Lions at Ellis Park. I think a lot of people might have gone for the Lions to maybe sneak a victory there. With the Stormers and Sharks obviously not playing. Yeah, the Kings sort of stole the limelight, beating the Sunwolves. I think I talked about that whoever wins that would be the only match they'd probably win all season. I think the Sunwolves are a little bit weaker than I think anyone really thought. It was their first match outside of Singapore or Tokyo. They've also made the long trip playing against the Kings at home. It was do or die. It was a really gutsy defensive effort in particular, I thought, from the Kings. They've picked up their victory. I'm not 100% certain they're still going to win another game. It is still, I guess, a long season to go, but they're going to have their work cut out for them. They might run a few teams close, but I'm not too sure they're going to win too many more matches. And then the Bulls-Cheetahs match, not for me, not the greatest rugby played. I guess that's sort of what you came to expect. The Bulls looked good at parts, and the Cheetahs came back. Then the Bulls, scored late again. So again, not a great advertisement for South African rugby when you compare it to what took place in New Zealand in particular, and some of the Australian matches. You mentioned the Rebels knocking over the Waratahs. I think the Waratahs is probably the biggest disappointment for out of every team this tournament. Great things expected from them. The changing in the coach with Michael Checker leaving just to focus on the Wallaby job, I think that sort of hampered them. They just looked out of sorts completely against the Rebels team, which has, since their first half mauling against the Bulls, ironically, where they came back in the second half to score 4 tries and run them a little bit close. They've been really good. I think they're now tied at the top of the Australian Conference with the Brumbies. But the Brumbies lost as well. So it's all sort of pointing towards New Zealand dominating again this tournament, with the other teams sort of just fighting to make those quarterfinal spots. But obviously week 6, we're about a third of the way through the tournament. A lot can still happen. The Stormers and Sharks back in action. I think they're going to be our 2 flag bearers still, and see how they compare against the New Zealand teams when they're later on in the tournament.
Rob, so most of the games going the way we expected, although a lot of them were quite close. The Chiefs, however, blowing away the Brumbies pretty much in Canberra. First win in Canberra, I believe, in 8 years. They're looking increasingly dangerous.
Yeah, that was a huge statement, Nick. They, the Brumbies are a team who have given some South African teams some seriously good runs for their money over the last couple of years. So we remember last season how they completely outclassed the Stormers at Newlands. I know the tables have been turned subsequently, but the way they were blown apart at home, Canberra is usually considered a bit of a fortress for them. South African teams usually don't go there, for example, with too much hope of getting anything at all out of a game, and yet they get absolutely blown off the park by a Chiefs team, sort of prepared to run from all angles. Unbelievable creativity, the way they sort of play into space and so on. Lots of lessons there. And looking at it right now, I'd say there are several New Zealand teams who are all vying potentially for the title. Their biggest enemy is the structure of the competition, which precludes that possibility from happening. There's going to be an unjust situation I see emerging as the season goes on, where you're going to have possibly as many as 3 or even 4 New Zealand teams, excluding the Blues, right up there in terms of overall log, but are not making a whole heap of difference because of the conference structure, which is going to give guaranteed quarterfinals to teams from different conferences across the competition. So we're going to see some injustice creeping in. But as you rightly say, the Chiefs put down a huge marker, but so have the Crusaders. That game against the Lions was a high-quality rugby match. I thought it was really thrilling, edge-of-the-seat stuff from start to finish. A real positive that the Lions contributed very fulsomely to the game. They did deserve to be beaten in the end. There's still a sort of naivety about their approach, but you have to laud Johan Ackermann for the strides he's making in really sort of trying to reinvent a South African franchise as a side that can genuinely go toe-to-toe with some of the better New Zealand teams. So I hope he sticks to his template. But that Crusaders team is also one on the rebuild. They haven't won the championship for several years now, but they are 7-time champions. A lot of pride in that franchise. and they're going to be right up there. And it looks as though the defending champion Highlanders, despite that little, the difficulties they had for large sections of the game against the Force, are still going to be thereabouts at the end of the season. So at this stage, I'm afraid the balance of power is leaning ominously towards another New Zealand title success.
Right, gents, thank you.
Okay.